You know things are bad for Donald Trump when even Fox is talking about it. And that is exactly what we saw this morning when Fox, yes, the Fox propaganda outlet, detailed how quickly Donald Trump's agenda could fall apart as it is facing increased scrutiny from Republicans in the Senate. We are going to get into it all and how Donald Trump is melting down. But first, I want to start with a Democrat who is explaining why this bill could be so catastrophic. That's Elizabeth Warren right here.
And Democrats believe that no grandma should be pushed out of her nursing home so that Elon Musk can take a subsidized rocket ship ride to Mars. It doesn't have to be this way. What if, instead of tax breaks for billionaires, we make the rich pay their fair share? What if, instead of slashing health care for our kids, we make it possible for every American to see a doctor when they're sick without breaking the bank? And what if, instead of giving big oil more giant handouts, we make universal child care a reality for families all across this country? We can tax the rich. Damn it, if Jeff Bezos can afford to rent Venice for $50 million for his wedding, he can afford to pitch in his fair share on taxes so the next kid has a chance to make it big, and the kid after that, and the kid after that. We can make life better for working people. We can make it easier, not harder. We can lower costs for families, not jack them up even more like this bill does. We can put families first, not billionaires and billionaire corporations. Democrats believe this. Democrats are willing to fight for this. We will vote no on this awful bill. And for kids like Vivian, for seniors in nursing homes, for families who rely on home health aides, and for the millions more Americans that this bill will hurt, I urge my Republican colleagues, grow a spine and vote no.
It is clear the generational damage that this bill would do. And of course, we've talked so much about these cuts to Medicaid that would kick millions of Americans off of their health care. But even more than that, the ripple effect goes out to rural hospital closures, not just rural hospitals, hospitals across the country. And it's the reason you see Republicans like Tom Tillis standing up in opposition to this bill, and his opposition potentially pushing conservatives, potentially pushing Republicans to do the same. So the reason why we saw this bill delayed last night could be very scary for Donald Trump. And before we get to Peter Doocy breaking down why, I want to start with Tillis.
That between the state-directed payments and the cuts scheduled in this bill, there's a reduction of state-directed payments. And then there's the reduction of the provider tax. They can't find a hole in my estimate. So what they told me is that, yeah, it's rough, but North Carolina's used the system. They're going to have to make it work. All right. So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there anymore, guys? When the White House, senators advising the president are not telling him that the effect of this bill is to break a promise. And you know the last time I saw a promise broken around health care, with respect to my friends on the other side of the aisle, it's when somebody said, if you like your health care, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. We found out that wasn't true. That made me the second Republican Speaker of the House since the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, because we betrayed the promise to the American people.
You have Republicans in opposition to this. You have John Thune terrified to move this to a vote because they know just how bad it is. And that is also what was broken down, surprisingly, by Peter Doocy this morning, warning if Donald Trump faces increased opposition, his entire presidency could potentially fall apart. Just take a look.
But if they cannot get this done, that's going to be a big problem here at the White House because President Trump stuffed so many different things that he promised he was going to do in the campaign into this bill, and he has been trusting Mike Johnson and John Thune to get it done. If they can't, it's going to take a really, really long time for them to go individual item by individual item and fight it out over each thing to try to get the Trump agenda passed. Back to you.
Yeah, in the back of his head, John Thune must be saying, this is why I wanted to do 2 bills.
Donald Trump calls this the big, beautiful bill, which is just stupid and ugly because it's a big bag of garbage, because it's just jamming everything possible into the one bill. What's beautiful to Donald Trump about it is that it means afterwards he doesn't have to do any more work because, of course, he doesn't actually care about governing. If he's unable to pass this, his agenda completely falls apart. It would be a devastating blow to Donald Trump. The Republican caucus can't get behind anything. We see congressmen retiring right now, not saying that they won't run for re-election, but retiring right now. Donald Trump is losing numbers. He's losing support, and this could mean the end of his presidency because we know what is happening in the midterms, and that's why we have to continue to deliver this message against his agenda, and Bernie Sanders was doing that right here.
Get a $918 billion tax break. That is what the 1% and the wealthy campaign contributors get. So here's what you get, assuming you're not a billionaire. This bill throws over 16 million people off of the health insurance they have by slashing Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by over $1.1 trillion. So, $1 trillion in tax breaks for the 1%, $1 trillion in cuts in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Further, it forces millions of Medicaid recipients to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor. So what is the impact of all this? What happens when you throw 16 million people off health care, you impose a $35 copayment? Well, what the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania estimate is that if this reconciliation bill is enacted, and it's unbelievable for me to say this, but this is what they are telling us, this is what they have studied. If this bill goes through and all these healthcare cuts take place, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily each and every year. 50,000 Americans. In other words, this bill is a horrific death sentence for low income and working class Americans. Further, if this legislation is enacted, rural hospitals all over the country that are already struggling would be forced to shut down. It would also make massive cuts to community health centers and nursing homes. In other words, this legislation is the most significant attack on the healthcare needs of the American people in the modern history of our country. So, our healthcare system is broken, it's dysfunctional, and they make it even worse. And that's not all. This bill wipes out nutrition assistance for millions of hungry kids at a time when we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of nearly any major nation on earth. This bill will also make it much harder for working class kids to receive the higher education they need by cutting education by some $350 billion. At a time when the planet is struggling with climate change, heat waves now all over the world, this bill decimates investment in energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind and solar. If you are concerned about how the United States keeps getting into never-ending wars, this bill makes a bad situation even worse by handing out another $150 billion to the Pentagon, a 15% increase in an already bloated Pentagon budget. Now, I want to applaud all of the Democrats, every single one of them, who strongly oppose this bill. And I want to congratulate 2 Republicans, Senators Paul and Senator Tillis, for voting with the Democrats in opposition to proceeding on this bill. But here is something really interesting and quite telling about where the Republican Party is today. When Senator Tillis of North Carolina indicated that he would vote against the bill, he was lambasted on social media by Trump and he was threatened with a primary. He actually did not do what Trump wanted him to do. Is there anything in this world that is worse than that? Today, Senator Tillis announced that he would not seek re-election. So it is pretty clear to me, and I would hope to every American, that the Republican Party of today does not tolerate any independent thought. One might have believed that members of Congress were elected to represent their constituents, to do what they thought right for their constituents. But that's not what it is in the Republican Party right now. The sole function of Republican members of Congress is just to tell Donald Trump how brilliant he is, how infallible he is, how great he is, put up a statue of him on Mount Rushmore, oh my God. And if any Republican, like Senator Tillis, suggests otherwise, they will be politically destroyed. This is pathetic, and it has all of the hallmarks of the kind of authoritarian society that Trump wants to take us into. Dissent is simply not tolerated anymore within Republican ranks. I don't have to tell anybody that this is an extremely difficult moment in American history. Trump and the oligarchs have unlimited wealth. They have a great deal of power and they want more. But there is something that we have. And we saw that just last week in the recent mayoral primary in New York City. So what you had is one candidate supported by all of the big money interest, all of the oligarchs, but you had the other candidate who was supported by ordinary people. And guess who won? The guy, Mr. Mamdani, who was supported by rank and file New Yorkers, won the election. So I think what we can learn from that is that if we stand together and not let Trump and his friends divide us up based on our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation or the color of our skin, if we stand together, we can beat the oligarchs. And let me tell you, in this moment in history, that is exactly what we've got to do.
This is the message that we have to present against Donald Trump's agenda, and we have to continue to hit it every single hour of today, and we have to hit it moving forward. This is a bill that is catastrophic. It will impact people's lives to a degree they don't understand yet. We have to make sure we are making that case. We're certainly going to be doing so on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.